and welcome to my review of Halo Reach. Halo Reach is the last Halo game made by Bungie for Microsoft, and they decided, rather than go down the predictable path of doing Halo 4, they decided to do a prequel to the original Halo game, which was released on the original Xbox now quite some years ago. You play the part of a Spartan called Noble 6, and you're based on the planet Reach. Now, for most fans of the Halo franchise, they'll know that the planet Reach was the scene of a cataclysmic battle between the Covenant and the Spartans. The Spartans are like superhuman soldiers. They're genetically enhanced humans who are like the perfect warrior, the apex of soldier that the humans can put on the battlefield. However, on Halo Reach, the Spartans were virtually wiped out of existence by overwhelming Covenant forces. And this game, as I've said already, is the prequel to Halo and tells the story of what happened on Reach. Now, there have been some fan novels that was released detailing the story of Reach, but I'm not really referring to any of that. I'm just going to refer to the timeline and the stories as presented by the games. So it's to keep that level of consistency going. When you play the original Halo, you actually play as the last Spartan, the Master Chief, but in Halo Reach you play as another Spartan called Noble 6, and this adds quite a unique dynamic to playing a video game, because you know that the Master Chief is the last remaining Spartan in Halo, and this obviously being a prequel to Halo, you're in the unusual position of knowing that the character that you're playing, and I'm sure I'm not going to come out with any spoilers here, especially for fans of the Halo series, but you know that the character that you're playing isn't going to survive. This is a prequel to Halo. When you start playing Halo, you're the Master Chief. You're not playing as Noble 6. And this, I imagine, presented pretty much a unique challenge for Bungie. Simply because, like when a movie maker makes a film about a true event that everybody knows what happens at the end of it, from a storytelling point of view, and for keeping the interest of the game's player, Bungie are faced with the unique task of trying to make this game interesting and trying to keep the player actually invested in what's going on. It's quite a tricky thing to do, knowing that you're taking part in a battle that you can't win, but in a lot of respects it actually works quite well. I think it's safe to say that in playing the campaign in Halo Reach, I probably in more sections fought harder and with a degree of more savagery against the Covenant forces than I'd done in any other previous Halo game. I can't really put my finger as to why, but I think there was almost this act of desperation, this almost willingness to change the course of the Halo universe, almost as daft as it seems, that, you know, I would single-handedly defeat all the Covenant forces on Reach. And of course, you know, it's not going to work out that way. You know it's not going to work out good for you in the game, and you know it's not going to work out well for the Spartans that are in your squad, Noble 6. Speaking of which, it's nice to actually play as part of a squad. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a squad-based first-person shooter. This is very, very similar to the original Halo, in that, you know, it's just your standard straight up first person shooter. You're not issuing orders, you're not having to worry about your own team. In fact, they tend to issue the orders to you, but it's just nice to feel like you're part of this huge battle that's going on, where the future of mankind actually hangs in the balance. And it's strange that despite the fact that you are successful in the missions that you're assigned, you still all the while feel that you're losing ground to the Covenant. And again, that's really testament to how well Bungie have designed the game, that in spite of the fact that you're successful in carrying out the missions. Obviously you have to be in order to progress through the game. You still feel like you're losing ground. You still feel like, you know, you're fighting a hopeless battle. And I'm not really too sure how Bungie have done it, but they've managed to pull it over really well. It never feels like a cop-out. You know, it never feels like, you know, you're on the cusp of victory and suddenly this massive gun appears in, you know, out of nowhere. Massive gunship appears out of nowhere and blows everybody up, and it never feels like that. You despite the fact that, you know, you wipe out loads of Covenant, despite the fact that you keep on going forward and keep achieving your missions, you get the feeling that things are only really going to plan on your side of the battle, that, you know, it's like you're playing a big game of chess, like a real warfare. You know, I imagine this is what it would be like. You know, you're doing your bit, but elsewhere on the, you know, on the battlefront, this is, you know, a huge planet-wide campaign. Things are going bad, and the Covenant, with their overwhelming forces, are just overwhelming. There aren't enough Spartans, there aren't enough elite human soldiers to change the course of the battle. They're hopelessly outnumbered. And as I say, it is testament to the fantastic storytelling and game design that Bungie have come up with. I was really surprised by this, and I guess it's because the last two Halo games were a bit of a letdown. Halo 2 was a real crushing disappointment for me, because I love the original Halo game and really couldn't wait for Halo 2 to come out. But for some reason, Bungie just didn't do a particularly good job, especially single player. The multiplayer, you know, was obviously one of the most talked about things with Halo 2, but the single player campaign didn't really work at all, and I can never put my finger on it. You know, quite often I sit and think, was it down to the wielding of the dual weapons, which took up too much of the screen? Or was it just the fact that, you know, it was the overall design? I think it was a mixture of a couple of things. I think, if anything, Bungie were perhaps guilty of being too ambitious with Halo 2. With Halo 3, I think it was a very similar game to Halo 2 in that respect. They even though it was a better game, primarily because there was better technology there to make a better game, I think with Halo 3 it suffered the same thing as well. You know, trying to do too much. Halo Reach, Bungie have gone back to basics, and it looks and feels a lot more like the original Halo. And even though you're playing the part of a different character, you could very well easily be the Master Chief, and that's not a bad thing. You know, that's not, you know, a cop out on the part of Bungie. That is really down to the fact that they've gone back to the basics. They've gone back to what made Halo such a great game when it first come out, and they've really nailed it this time. And it's great that they go out on such a high point rather than a damp squib, which I think I was a little bit fearful of. Halo Reach is probably not going to convert any fans, any haters of the original Halo games. But it's certainly those people who liked Halo but didn't like the direction the series went with Halo 2 and 3. They'll certainly love this. One of the other things that's been included in the game is this flying section, which you can see now, and this is just completely off the wall. In previous Halo games, you've always been able to commandeer Covenant and human sort of tanks and Warthogs and so on and so forth, and Banshees. Here you actually get to go into space and fight a space battle for the first time in the series, and you'd be forgiven if Bungie had just tacked this on and it was pretty flimsy. It's not. It's really robust, and it's so unusual for a game which has two completely different genres in it, such as a space flight shoot 'em up and a first person shooter. It's very unusual that you get such an evolved game in both aspects. Normally you would expect the space section to be either on rails or pretty token and throwaway, primarily because the physics involved tend to be quite different to those physics that are involved in a first-person shooter. You know, you're moving through 3 dimensions in space, which is something you're not doing in a first-person shooter. You're not actually, you know, pirouetting through the air and being involved in a dogfight. And for them to have pulled it off so well, again, is, you know, another testament to how much of a good job Bungie have done with this game. The multiplayer aspect of it is fantastic, as tends to be in Halo games. There isn't really enough time to go through everything in a 14-15 minute review. I'd have to do a review entirely based for the multiplayer, because there's that many different game modes and that many different things that you can do. It's just unbelievable. I mean, all the standard game modes are there. You've got your full cooperative campaign, which is there as well. You know, take note of that one, Activision, next time you're doing a Call of Duty game. There's the Forge, which is where you can create your own multiplayer scenarios and so on and so forth. There's just loads and loads to go through. And really, that's going through the actual game. That's pretty much about it. Is it the best Halo game? I would say so, yes. I think you'd have to be pretty cynical not to say that this isn't the best one. It betters the first game because of the added space, flight sections. There's a few extra shields and power-ups for your battle armor, which isn't there in the first game. And all in all, the actual storytelling itself is far more evolved in this. It's almost sad to play the role of a guy that you know is doomed to die. You almost, you know, feel more involved with the character, because you know that there's a sense of vulnerability there. When you play as the Master Chief, you always felt there was an invincibility about the guy. He was the last Spartan. But when you played Halo, you had no idea of the ability of the Spartans and you know what had happened to them. You just knew that they were all gone, but you'd never played as a Spartan before. So when you played as in the original Halo, you felt quite invulnerable. It's quite the opposite when you play this game. You know what's going to happen. Ultimately, it's not going to be good. And without giving away too many spoilers, the ending to this game is handled fantastically well. All I will say is stick by your joypad after the credits for the actual proper ending to the game. It really does deliver. Honestly, it's possibly up there with one of the best endings ever, because you are part of the ending. You're not sat there watching you know, pre-rendered video or, you know, static screens or text rolling up. You are actually a part of it, so don't miss out on the ending bit after the credits. It really is worth it. And that's about it for my review of Halo Reach. Graphically, sound-wise, musically, it ticks all the boxes. It is a fantastic game. Bungie have done a really good job. Like I say, it's not going to convert any Halo haters, but I don't think Bungie have gone out to do that. They've just gone out to make a game really to acknowledge Halo as it was, as it first came out, what drew people in, and all in all, they've done a great job. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.